All right. Well, welcome everybody. This is our first edition of Grace to All, and my very first guest is a good friend on the internet. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting him in person, but I'm looking forward to that. But it's Pastor Kyle Butler. Kyle started ministering at the age of 13. I'm not sure what I was doing at 13, but I don't think I was ministering then. He was one of the main speakers during their youth night services. He was ordained in 92 when he was 21 years old, so that'll give you a little bit of idea of he's quite a bit younger than I am, and he studied under, worked with some great people. He was an associate pastor, and then took over the ministry in 1999 as a senior pastor. He changed the name of their ministry to New Beginning Ministries. Staff is enlarged, ministries have been established, and they've become a ministry of change. In 2008, God told Kyle to teach my people. And he started revealing to him the revelation of grace, which is, of course, what we're all about here on Grace to All. And since then, the revelation of our Father's unconditional love and grace has become the main part of his ministry and the thrust of all his teachings, which I know because I watch him and listen to him on the internet a lot and always enjoy and am touched and motivated by his teaching. He's had the privilege to minister in various parts of the country. I see him all the time in different states and different places, and I envy him getting around like that. And his desire is to help and teach as many people as he can about the unconditional love of our Father and the unlimited grace in the person of Jesus. And he co-hosts shows on Facebook Monday night at 8 o'clock called Graceline, and Thinking into Greatness, Tuesday nights at 7 o'clock, which I've had the privilege of being on, Thursdays at 7 on the three-chord strand ministry page. He's an instructor for WBS, World Bible School University, an accredited online Bible college, and he's got Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and KyleButler.com website things. You can find him all over, all the time, and always saying good things. So after me saying all of that, my friend and brother, welcome. I'm glad to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored, and knowing that this is the first one and of your show, your podcast that you're starting here. I'm just so honored that I get to be the first. It's rare that I get to be the first at something, so I'm going to cherish this one.
Well, you are first in my book. So where are you physically today? What part of the country are you in right now?
I'm in New Jersey right now. I was in Texas for about 6 months, and I grew up here in New Jersey. I came back to spend some time with the family and all that good stuff. And, it looks like I picked a bad time because we've had a lot of snow and cold weather ever since I've been back.
Yeah, most people I know of in New Jersey, New York, around there, go south for the winter. And
Right.
You kind of reverse that, so you're a guy who doesn't play by the rules, right?
Yeah, not very often.
Yeah. Well, Kyle, as you know, and we've talked, my goal on this podcast, Grace to All, is both to help people understand that God's unlimited, unconditional love and grace is literally for all people, no matter who or where or what. And I also want people to not just go, oh, well, that's cool, that's a nice thing to know, but I'd like for people to really see how this knowledge and understanding and a relationship with God has actually changed our lives for the better. So tell us, if you would, just for you personally, how God's grace to everybody has changed your life.
From the bio that you read, it's pretty clear that I've been around church and church life for a long, long time. In the denomination that I grew up in, we were very separate into ourselves. And the idea was that we were the only ones who had it right. We were the only ones who knew God. We were the only ones who did it His way, the way we danced around the church, the way we shouted, the way we spoke in tongues, the way we did our thing. We were the only ones that had it right. And occasionally when we would fellowship out with other people, we'd come back and the pastor would just dissect everything they did wrong and how they don't know God and they don't have the Holy Ghost and all that kind of stuff. So I grew up in this environment with a mindset that, it's best to just stay within your little group because no one else really knows anything. And that mindset walked with me for a long time. And I found myself, although I'm a nice person by nature, I found myself very religiously minded as I looked at other people. I would look at people who didn't look like me, act like me, talk like me, worship like me, often with great disgust. And I remember as a young minister and coming into the pastorship, my mom would always say to me, I'm really going to be praying that God gives you more compassion.
Really? Yeah. That sounds like a mom.
Yeah.
A good mom.
Yeah. Because I was just hard because I had grown up in this hard way of thinking about other people. If you didn't look like us, act like us, talk like us, then you were just against us and we were against you. So my view was very hard on other people. Well, her prayers worked, but probably not in the way that she thought. I didn't get zapped with more compassion, supernaturally out the blue. And I woke up one day, I'm like, ooh, I think I'll be more compassionate.
Doesn't always work like that, does it?
Right. But what happened was, as the bio mentioned, in 2008, Father came to me and he spoke these words to me and it changed my life. He said, son, you have no idea how big my grace is.
Yeah.
And I was curious because I really didn't know much about grace itself. I knew a few passages of scriptures that talked about grace, but we had never studied grace or taught grace or anything like that.
And you were in the ministry at that time.
Yeah, I was in ministry heavy at that point. This is, 2008. So I'd been, preaching and pastoring for quite some time now. I'd never preached a message on grace ever. So when he said that to me, I said, show me, because I was curious as to what he meant. And boy, let me tell you, he's done exactly just that. And it's through the revelation of grace. The way I like to say it is the revelation of grace, as it unveiled itself and revealed itself to me and changed my thinking, not only towards myself and how our Father views us and loves us and sees us, but how I saw other people. That's when the compassion came in. That's when my understanding for others started to open up. And then something really remarkable happened. Grace then took me by the hand when I was ready and said, let me introduce you to unconditional love. Yeah. And then these two wonderful, wonderful, people, God the Father, Jesus the Son, kind of put their arms around me, and I'm walking in the middle of them. And after a little bit of time with unconditional love and unlimited grace, they looked at me and said, hey, guess what? We're all one. And and then when I was able to see that as the revelations of grace and unconditional love and our oneness was growing, then I began to see everyone as one. And I stopped seeing people as different. I stopped seeing people and their flaws and their issues and how they didn't line up to what I thought they should. And I just started seeing people as highly beloved people, just like I am, regardless of where they are. So I walk down the street now in an urban environment in a city that has some pretty rough areas. And I see people, and I no longer look at a person who's intoxicated as a dirty drunk, or a person who might be on the street corner selling herself as a dirty prostitute. I look at these people and I walk by them and I say, highly beloved of the Father, highly beloved of the Father, highly beloved of the Father. So that's what it's done for me. And that's how it's radically changed the way I see people and how I interact with people. And that's why I share the messages that I share, because it does relate, point to, include all. No one's been excluded from this, regardless of their behavior or background or whatever. No one's been excluded. We're all equally the same, viewed the same, seen the same, and loved the same. And that's what the revelation has done for me towards other people. And it's been remarkable.
It is remarkable. I know I can, of course, we're audio here on the podcast, but you and I are doing a Zoom video thing. I can see it. I can see the joy and the excitement and love and compassion in your face, and of course, hear it in your voice too. And people notice that they don't. People don't care how much we know, especially when we know, in quotes, that we're better than they are, and they're out and we're in. But they can just see I know I can see you radiating God's joy and unconditional love. And gosh, not only does that give us a whole new perspective for other people, but I mean, it makes you happy, doesn't it? I mean, you at least it does me. And I, like
Yeah.
you, our setting here in Lawrence, Kansas, a university town in the Midwest, is probably a little different than where you are right now. But still, we have people. We have people all the time that are hurting and that are they're looking for something. Now we know they're looking for unconditional love and inclusion and acceptance, and to know that they have some value. And they're looking for that many times in the wrong ways and by the wrong actions and means. But we can give that to them. We may not have a lot of money to give them, or silver or gold, but man, we can give them what we have, which is
Yeah.
unconditional love and grace and acceptance, and just seeing people, as you said, for who they really are, not for who they appear to be. And when I think about myself, Kyle, that's such a wonderful thing, because man, for many years, and maybe even still, people would look at me and go, "Man, he's far from God. He's well, I won't even use some of the words that were used,
Yeah.
but yeah, I just as Paul wrote in 2 Corinthians 5, uh, uh, we don't see people that way anymore,
Right. Right.
and man, it's wonderful, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. It really, really is. I not too long ago, I picked up a dear brother of mine from his dialysis treatment, and he has a thing when I'm taking him home. He likes to stop at McDonald's and get a extra large iced tea with a lot of ice, because he
Mm,
loves to chew on the ice.
mm,
So as our routine goes, I pull into the drive-through, and in these urban environments, it's very common to have panhandlers outside the windows of drive-throughs, kind of as soon as you drive by, asking you for change.
really?
So I saw the guy ahead of me while I was paying, and I knew what to expect. The old Kyle would have, you know, brazenly rolled up my window, looked at him in a very stern way, and kind of disgust, and just like, "Ugh, leave me alone, go get a job or something." But as I'm riding by, I knew what to expect. I already had a dollar bill in my hand. I handed it to him before he even asked, and I heard these words, and it was, I didn't create him to be this way, and
Mm,
I didn't create you to treat him poorly.
mm,
And I was so happy I didn't,
wow,
of course.
wow,
But that really cemented where I've come from, to where I
hmm,
am. That really sealed it right there.
wow,
He wasn't created to be in his position where he's at right now today,
hmm,
and I wasn't created to judge him in his position where he's at today. So you're
wow.
absolutely right. When Paul said that, I think that's a big part of what he was talking about as well. That we don't
Yeah.
see people, and we shouldn't see people according to where they are right now, because that's not how they're seen, and that's not how they're known.
Well, that's exactly right. Is it first or second Corinthians 4:18 that we don't look at what we can see and what's
See, yeah,
temporal, but what's
right,
unseen and eternal.
yeah,
Yeah, boy, what's unseen is that Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, the Trinity, is in every single person. They were in that guy. They're in the people we see all the time. They're in us, and and when the Father gives us eyes to see, and that revelation of that, we can see that, man, and it changes everything. Kyle, you mentioned several times. You said back in 2008 the Father spoke to you, and then He spoke to you again with this guy. Have you always heard from God? When did that start? What brought that about? Is there a formula to being able to hear from God? I know there's not, but I want our people listening to understand.
I grew up with two opinions. One was God only speaks when it's necessary. That's what I was taught. But
Hmm.
it was contrary to what I was experiencing.
Hmm.
I felt God was always talking to me. I always heard something, and I didn't always know it was Him, but I felt that God was always talking. And then I later realized God always has something to say.
Hmm.
Um, and I think what happens is, where we've been taught that you got to learn the voice of God and learn how to hear from God. And what that meant to me early on was, get on your knees, lay there for hours, and just wait to hear something. And so in that mindset, I waited for some big bam boom, some, the ceiling to open up and the light to shine down and some angelic force to fill the room and start talking. Of course, that never happened. And over the years, as I started, kind of detouring from that way of thinking to going back to what I had always believed growing up as a kid, remembering moments where I would hear from the inside these things. And, I knew, I came to know that it was our Father speaking. And, I can't say that I go, a day without hearing something from him. Now, sometimes it's a clear, audible voice. And I say it this way. I believe God is always talking to us. And there's some things he may say to us through our spirit, through our listening ear. We may not remember every single thing, right? So if he says, be kind today, you may not remember that in 3 years. But there are other times where it is loud and audible and it's clear, like, son, you have no idea how big my grace is. That I'll never forget. It was one of those moments where you heard his voice so clearly, so audibly, and it sent you on a path that changed everything. And you always point back to that moment. So I think that's what happens when people feel like they don't have that. They feel like God's not speaking, but he is, right? And some people call it common sense. Some people call it consciousness. Some people call it awareness or whatever it is, but he's always speaking. And I think that we just need to just come to terms with the fact that he's a good father who wants to always talk to us.
Man, he is. And that, gosh, is so wonderful to know. And I've like you, I've always heard him, and but I've come to know my journey started about the same time as you, 2009. But I've really learned that one of the ways that we can know for sure it's him that's speaking. There will never be any condemnation. There won't be any.
Right.
There won't be any guilt. There won't be any shame on you, and it will always be in love. And it will always be through the lens of unconditional love and grace, and not only for me but for the other people that I'm interacting with. And so if I hear something that's judgmental or condemning or putting somebody else down or saying that they're out and we're in or whatever, I can know that ain't Papa.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah. So what's next for you and your ministry and where you're going and what you're doing?
Oh, wow. Over the past 3 months, there's been this explosion of opportunities like this one to speak and share and primarily through the internet here, which I find is a fantastic tool. I want to just, let me say this. I started researching and I watch a lot of your videos about our mind and our thoughts and how this all plays a role in quantum physics and some of the things we're learning outside of the traditional loop that we kind of grew up in. And so it started really just trying to discover, okay, what is this all about? And I've been fascinated by what I've discovered. So I was for years, I was always, quote, praying, God, give me more opportunity. God, give me more opportunity. Why won't you use me more? Why won't you send me out more? Yada, yada, yada. Even though, I had been out and done some things, I just felt like I should be doing much, much more. And, that God should be doing more. And come on, God, open up these doors. Well, when I started understanding our thoughts and how powerful they are and how they play such a huge role in how we create our lives and how this whole thing develops from the inside, right? One day I was in Texas and I was just there and I heard my thoughts that I had been saying to myself for years. And that was, no one wants to hear me. So
Really?
I was praying for God to open doors, but my thoughts were saying and had convinced me that no one wants to hear me.
Wow.
And I remember when I heard that thought that I had thought and said to myself so many times over the years, when it came to my awareness that this is what I was saying, the light bulb went off and I was like, oh my goodness, I've been praying for something, but thinking totally opposite of what I was praying for. And
wow.
The prayer wasn't overriding the thought was overriding the prayer.
Wow.
And And I immediately, took that thought and reprogrammed it immediately. I reprogrammed quickly. You're getting reprogrammed right now.
Yeah.
And I got rid of that thought, and I immediately started thinking otherwise. And I kid you not, my dear friend, within days, opportunities just started coming, and more and more opportunities started coming. And so that's where I am right now. And I think I'll be doing this a whole lot more. And I'm pretty excited just to see this, and also how I got here. Right. And so I'm just having a lot of fun, just sharing.
Good.
And just trying to help motivate people.
Well, you are. And gosh, it's amazing, Kyle, what our minds can do. I mean, I look at you and I listen to you, and ever since I first started doing that, I thought, man, everybody's got to just really be enjoying and getting a lot from listening to Kyle. But yet, as you said, and I had no idea you were doing this, our own mind can tell us, who wants to hear from somebody like me? And I've had those thoughts too. And they're just flat out lies.
Yeah.
And as I know you listen to Don Keithley, he's had great teaching lately to recognize those harmful thoughts and reject them, release them to Christ, and then reprogram or replace them with good thoughts, which is what you're doing. And that's what we want people to do who are listening to this podcast, to recognize maybe things that they have thought in the past about themselves or others, that God's unconditional love and grace was not for them, and to reject those as the lies that they are, just to release them and then reprogram them with the truth that God loves you and them and me and everybody equally the same, unconditionally, no limits, no conditions, no time limits, nothing like that. And his wonderful grace covers all of us, is in us all, and for us all, and to us all. And man, that makes all the difference in the world, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And you're one of those pioneers. I call you a pioneer. Your YouTube videos and your posts and your books, and especially Grace Is. I got a inbox one day, and they asked me, "Hey, Kyle, can you just recommend some people like yourself who are just including all and loving all?" And I put your name in there, and the name of your book, and Catherine Toon and her book, and I think one other book. And maybe a month or so later, she wrote me back and said, "Oh my God, this book, Grace Is just amazing. It's changing my life. It's just so phenomenal. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you, thank you, thank you." And I was so excited by that, because I was like, yeah, Paul's the real deal, man.
Well, one of the best parts of that book is one of your endorsements in the beginning. So, well, we're in this together, and I'm starting a new. I haven't told you this, but I'm starting a new Grace Book group along with this podcast, where one of my goals is where it can be sort of a collective place where we can put each other's videos and blogs and posts on it, and we can have some times where people interact, and we can do just what you did. We can recommend other people. Man, when I started this journey, and we're about out of time, but when I started this journey in 2009, I thought I was the only one. I'd gotten one book that I'd read, and I knew there was nobody else in my town of 100,000.
Right.
And then I got introduced to Steve McVey, and I thought, oh man, there's two people in the world. But now, because of the internet and because of social media, there's people. This is just growing and snowballing all the time, and it's wonderful. Yeah. Well, our time is up. Thanks, Kyle, so much for being such a great guest, being the first guest on Grace to All. I really encourage people to check out Kyle Butler on internet, on YouTube, on your website, kylebutler.com, and to listen to you, get to know you, and hear you more. And I know they'll be blessed as they do. So we're going to stop here, and then Kyle, if you stay on the line, we'll talk a little bit more afterwards. But thanks again for being here, and I'll look forward to next time.
Thank you so much for having me, Paul. I really appreciate it. It's been a blast.
Thank you, Kyle. We'll do it again.
Okay.